Here is something I never thought I would say from the pulpit. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. I think there was a time when perhaps we, were taught that little saying because it was like a suit of armor at a certain age when children called names in attempts to hurt and bully. Kids on the playground, or perhaps even candidates for high elective office, use names to demean, to create separation, to foster doubt, to rally some against others, or to just hurt the one who is the subject or object of the name calling. Now, I'm not a Freudian therapist. I cannot give you all the deep-seated reasons, psychological or otherwise, for this kind of behavior. However, what I can say is that there is always something deeper that sits behind this kind of conduct. And as we explore this month's theme of deep listening, what the deeper meaning is behind the words is something for us to deeply listen to as well. The words we choose, where they come from, in us or others, and the way they are expressed are certainly a big part of the story, but they aren't the whole story. Let me give you an example that absolutely pertains to why many of us are here today. I can't even begin to tell you the amount of times I've heard someone say, "I am here for community," when asked why they came to UUCF. But community is actually one of those code words. And if we're using our deep listening skills, we know that there may be all kinds of other meanings rolled up into the word community. For example, when asking what led you to UUCF today, and we hear those words, "I was looking for community," the deeper meaning behind that could actually sound like this: I am here because I'm lonely, and I want to feel like there's somewhere where I can find connection. Or I'm here because I'm going through significant change in my life, like a breakup or a loss of a loved one, and I need a place that will help provide me with some comfort. Or, and this is a big one it seems in these times, I'm feeling anxious about the world, and I need a place that brings me some sense of hope and joy. And of course, what I have heard in the words of so many seeking community, I need to be seen, be safe, be whole, be brave, be loved, and feel like I belong, which appears on the lawn sign, again available free in the lobby after the service. Thank you, Matt. I went to Giant to pick up some food on the way to the pastoral care meeting yesterday morning. I had sort of one of those awkward moments when an employee and I caught each other's eye, and I felt the need to say something, so I said, "Good morning." And he smiled and turned to me, and he said, "But is it though?" Here I am at work when there are so many other things I could be doing. I laughed somewhat nervously, and I said, "Well, I get that. I'm going to work too. But it is a beautiful day. So for me, it actually is kind of a good morning." At which point I said, "I hope you have a really great day." And he said, "Thank you." And we went our separate ways. So much subtext. So many things going on in both of our minds. And the words that came out, well, those were just the words that rose to the surface. It's both difficult at times to get to know people and for us to feel comfortable enough to be known. There can be so many external messages thrown at us, especially in today's political and social environment, that makes the process of deep listening to what is often called that still small voice within us so much harder. And when we are listening, the words we choose absolutely do matter. The words that we choose and use can hide or fully demonstrate the emotions and thoughts that we wish to convey depending on the situation and our level of comfort in that situation. Part of the challenge of listening to others is actually really listening and not projecting or creating a story in our own heads about how the one you are listening to may feel based on superficial interactions like good morning, or thank you, or have a wonderful day. But of course, there is often deep or deeper meaning. For instance, if I were looking at a chart that divided the phrases into words about my needs being met or that signify my needs weren't being met, I would probably say that using words about being in community, for example, would fall under the category of my needs being met. Well, guess what? That chart actually exists. And one of the many versions of that chart about words that describe feelings come from the Center for School Transformation. And this chart, which will be too small for you to read today, but it has a QR code that you can use if you want to look at the chart. I like this chart because the heading actually is about when our needs are not being met and when our needs are being met. And here are some of the subheadings. Angry is when our needs are not being met. It's on the left side. And it says engaged, furious, incensed, indignant, irate, livid, mad, outraged, resentful, ticked off. I can think of a few other ones. Joyful is on when our needs are being met. Amused, buoyant, delighted, elated, ecstatic, glad, gleeful, happy, jubilant, merry, mirthful, overjoyed, radiant, and tickled. Right? Tickled. But those are the deeper words and feelings behind words that we often use that are easier for us to use in a more acceptable and comfortable way. Words matter. And one of my seminary professors taught us in our preaching class, and you can, take it down, great. In our preaching class, that on any given day, if there are 100 people in the congregation listening to your sermon, there will actually be 100 different sermons being preached. When we hear words that communicate thoughts from one person, they will also be filtered through our own experiences and through our own interpretations and lenses and frameworks, and we can't help that. Although I was away this past week, I listened to our intern minister, Kara's lovely sermon last week, and in part where she talked about the language of reverence and faith, always a subject in Unitarian Universalist congregations. We all have our own thoughts on words like worship and spirit and holy and God. Now, someone raised Jewish in Brooklyn is going to hear those things differently than someone raised Southern Baptist in rural Mississippi, or atheist whose spiritual experience since childhood might be surfing off the coast of Malibu. We are inevitably filtering, digesting, negotiating, processing, externalizing, internalizing all these words and thoughts and feelings of ourselves and of others all the time. So what in the world can we possibly do about all this in a way that actually helps us practice the values and principles of Unitarian Universalism? And how we practice those values and principles is the question for us here today. Because with our many identities, we can process anything we read or hear through such a wide variety of lenses. Do we process words, thoughts, and meanings based on our gender identity? Well, of course we do. Do we process based on the level of marginalization we've experienced in the world? Well, yes. Do we process through our personal economic situations and how we feel about that? Again, of course. And in addition to all of that, here we are together in a sanctuary and online on a Sunday morning, attending a Unitarian Universalist congregation's worship service, yet another filter for us to process through. And one of the biggest questions is, where does the Unitarian Universalist filter fall in the hierarchy of the filters that we use to process things? Is it a casual relationship? Is it a primary relationship? How important is the practice of this faith tradition to the everyday lens or framework in which we process the words, thoughts, and feelings of ourselves and others day in and day out? My hope for all of us is that it's a primary way, but then again, I'm the minister. And I hope that we all deeply listen to our own voice and the voice of others through the framework of our principles and our newly adopted values, admitting that living this UU faith tradition that specifically can be very challenging. And that one of the ways it challenges us is to use the filter, the lens, the framework of Unitarian Universalism as we interact in the world. I will freely admit, when reading the news about the hurricane conspiracy theories, you can laugh about that, about the Middle East, about anything that has to do with the election. I listen to those words, and sometimes Unitarian Universalism is not the first framework that I use. But I have to go deeper into my knee-jerk reaction because I know there are so many complexities at play in the words being used, the emotions being felt, and that still small voice in me and others. For when I am at my best, when responding to how this faith tradition calls me to my best self, when I deeply listen to the voice within that craves a more loving and compassionate world, I try to lift from deep within me that Unitarian Universalist value from which I filter my thoughts and my words high up to the surface. The values of interdependence, or how we honor the interdependent web of all existence. Of pluralism, or how we are all sacred beings diverse in culture, experience, and theology. Of justice, or that we work to create diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all feel welcome and can thrive. Of transformation, where we understand that the world is in a constant state of change, and so we are called to build skills to adapt to a changing world. Of generosity, where we strive to cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope, and of equity, where we declare and actively work to create a world where every person is inherently worthy and has a right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. Listening deeply is a skill to practice, but cannot be disconnected from the filters that we carry with us. Being Unitarian Universalist is also a practice. In these times where words are so often superficial and filled with hidden or not too hidden subtext and meaning, let us continue filtering the world through our Unitarian Universalist values, committed to doing so in times so needing deeper connection, understanding, kindness, and care. May that be so, and amen.